Karl, talking about this idea of being agile and organizational change and this idea of incremental continuous improvement. But it really, you also have to be a bit objective through metrics, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you can't change what you can't measure, right? Or what you don't measure. What can you share with our listeners in terms of the value of metrics in being agile?
So I think the essential metric is flow of work. It's so easy to go back to the metrics of Henry Ford and say we knocked out 500 cars, we're wonderful. If they're all black cars and no one's looking for a black car, it doesn't matter how many cars you knocked out because no one wants them. So I think in Agile, we're looking at what is the flow of work? How long did it take to get from an idea to a delivery? And was that delivery something that our customers wanted? So again, we have these problematic issues around technology where people are interested in release rate. Well, who cares? I mean, you can release 10,000 releases over 3 or 4 days or a week, and they could add no value to the organization either. So I think there's a number of different kinds of metrics, and that's the essential point. There's existing metrics, what do they tell us and why? Why are we gathering them? There's transformation metrics that tell us we're moving, that we are moving from one state to another. And there may be multiple transitions and therefore multiple sets of metrics to understand that transition. And then there's actual impact metrics that tells us that we are getting better engaged with our customers. Now, normal people use NPS, Net Promoter Score, but there are other metrics as well that we can use internally to understand how it's working for staff, how it's working for vendors. And there's also this tie back to our intent was to deliver a better set of outcomes and behaviors for our customers. Did we? And that's why you tie that to the flow of work to understand what did we do with the desire? How do we break it down into packages of work and into incremental change? And did we deliver value against those initial requirements of our customers, our stakeholders, our regulators, or whoever it is?
Yeah. And Karl, I think this is often an area where a lot of organizations, and especially in an ERP organizational change project, or frankly, any organizational change project, where they have this idea of metrics, but a lot of times perhaps they're not as carefully considered as they should be. And in your article here, and again, that's Agile Metrics Are a View. You mentioned that most metrics say nothing useful. And then you go on to say that during agile transformation activities, it's becoming more and more clear that the metrics employed are confusing, pointless, and highly frustrating. They are often a side of the desk activity that expresses nothing useful about the transformation or the optimizations in the flow of work that Agile is intended to deliver as a continuous evolution. That's a pretty important notion of the article. Can you just give us an example or just kind of maybe drill down a little more tactically? Do you have an example that you could illustrate with our listeners around that idea?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the classic one is how many agile teams do we have? So that's an abstract metric that indicates change, except it doesn't actually indicate change. It indicates an organizational construct that doesn't necessarily deliver anything. We now have 500 Scrum Masters and 100 Agile coaches. So what? Doesn't mean anything. And this is the thing: is these are metrics. They're true metrics, but they don't actually tell me that we are now responding to our customers' complaints quicker. And as a business person and business agility, that's what I need to know. Did we resolve our top 10 business issues that have come from our customers in the last 12 months? No. What did we do then?
In that example, Karl, those are metrics for sure, but they're metrics that you create at the onset of a project. And for the most part, they stay static, right? Those aren't necessarily metrics that will change throughout the duration of the project. It says, hey, they're organizational constructs to be sure. And you're just saying, hey, we have this idea that we want to do something about change. So we put these teams in place. So, hey, that's proof that we're doing something. But at the end of the day,
it's one of those problems that people say we don't have any agile teams, we don't have anyone working in an agile way.
Yeah.
So that's great. But a metric I would be interested in was how many new risks were raised when you moved to an
Exactly.
agile way of working.
Yeah.
How many opportunities were found to change processes and behaviors
Yeah.
now that you're working in an agile way?
Yeah.
And what was the outcome from those? So we raised a risk around the ordering of our work because it's not value sliced. So we're still doing big chunks of work, but we're now trying to describe it in an agile way. That's pointless. But
Yeah.
it's actually that metric has now indicated there's a problem with how we're trying to do transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good example from a high level that, hey, yeah, we're doing something because we created these agile teams, but so what, right? That's really not a metric. That's an intent.
Yeah. Well, so why are we doing metrics? We're doing metrics to understand for the business how they're meeting their strategic
Yeah.
and tactical goals.
Yeah.
That's what metrics are for. And then for HR, it's about churn and understanding happiness. I know it's a fluffy metric, but it's still important, and to understand environmental engagement and those kinds of factors. In a transformation, we need to understand what our baseline is. So we get the existing metrics around all the areas we're involved in transforming, and then try and understand what is moving. And so in transformation, most of the metrics should be emergent. They should emerge from the existing baseline metrics to understand change. But in terms of the endpoint metrics, well, firstly, there is no endpoint.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
we can do is start to say, in the flow of work, we now see that where we once had a regulatory requirement came in and we were able to respond within 3 years, we could now respond in 3 months. That is powerful.